Welcome to this new conversation, which is again about sustainability. So, our series that is called Sounds Like Sustainability Conversations is a collaboration between the International Environmental Communication Association, the IECA, and the institutions where I'm aligned to, which is the University of Queensland and the WU, Vienna University of Economics and Business. So this conversation should be an open space for sharing our ideas about what sustainability is, what sustainability communication is, and especially we want to talk about critical perspectives and aspects that are potentially really worth a critical reflection. So what we also try to do is to connect places. And since the IECA and different universities in Australia, in Europe, and in Austria here in particular, it's always wonderful to connect with amazing people, with wonderful scholars across the globe. And here we are creating a connection to the UK today. But as you all will see in a bit, we will open up this conversation and bring in other perspectives and other places of this beautiful world. So let me introduce my guest today, and I'm very, very happy that you are here, Gabor Sarlos, and I'm really, really happy to have this conversation with a specific focus on us as educators, not just as scholars, and the people that surround us in our everyday life working at universities, which is the students, and to talk about agency, to talk about pedagogy, to talk about education in a crisis scenario, in a plural or multiple crisis, as or however we want to call it. So thanks for being here. We will learn more about who you are, what you do in a second, but to open up this discussion, as we always do, is that we are quiet for a second, listen, and maybe there's a sound that somehow relates to sustainability, that somehow relates to what sustainability is, might be, can be, is not, reminds us of what it is. So is there any sound, Gabor, that you want to kind of introduce? Tell us about where are you at? What can you hear?
Oh, lovely way to start. Well, first of all, Francisca, thank you so much for inviting me on this call or this meeting today. I'm really very happy to be here. I follow your series and I really enjoy listening to them. So the sound that I have actually just a couple of minutes ago, I was watching out the window. I'm in South London at Roehampton. I'm at the University of Roehampton campus. And what I noticed, and actually I've seen it before, but now again they were active, there is a flock of birds which created a nest for themselves in just under the roof of one of the buildings. And believe it or not, it's not a local, it's not an indigenous flock of birds, but it's parakeets. I think it's a South American bird, sorry for that.
Okay.
Which is in a way an invasive species, and they are beautiful, and I love watching them. But talking to some of my colleagues in the zoology department, there are issues around them. So, but anyway, I heard them getting into their morning action, and there was quite a bit of sound around it. It's a very active, flock of birds. Always flying together. It was both sound and vision, if I might say. So a good start for a day.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And it points directly to, the cracks and those, challenging or even provocative aspects that made us think and that make us reflect on how sustainability is sometimes presented to us as a very positive, as a very beautiful story. It's a beautiful flock of birds, the parrots, and it's very exotic, and people love to look at it. But then, of course, it comes along with some other aspects that are rather critical. So thanks for sharing this example. And well, you already said where you are and the sounds that you can hear, and thanks for sharing the place where you are at. Can you just briefly tell us a bit more about yourself? Like, what is your main interest in terms of your research? What are you teaching? Where are you at? Can you introduce yourself briefly a bit more?
Absolutely, and I'll make it short, even if there are some twists in my life that I've conducted so far. So originally, my background is in business. I graduated with an economics degree, and used to run my own communications consultancy firm for 20 plus years. And then a moment came, or rather a period of time, when I realized there are other things that I would like to pursue in life, and I became more and more interested in teaching. I started first as a visiting lecturer, then at the age of around early 50s, I did my PhD in sociology of communications. And for the last 10 years, I've been in academia, and most of this in the UK, not all of it. I might come back to what the other 2 years were. But basically, my prime interest is, while my background and what I formally teach is around, or most of it, what I teach is around strategic communication, communication, crisis communication, marketing communication. So these areas pretty much from the business perspective. However, I have another self, if I may say, and I try to combine these two, which is very much around the importance and relevance of social and environmental issues, and most importantly, climate change, and how climate change is perceived and touched upon by young people. Perhaps that is my keenest interest, if I might say.
Mhm.
And everyday life brings plenty of opportunities to both study this, to teach this, to research this. So these are the two main areas that I'm trying to combine.
Mhm. Amazing. So, strategic communication, thinking about ways to pursue a message to which is related to a specific purpose, and then, of course, in times of crisis, climate change, climate crisis, and how especially young people can be connected to those issues and potentially empowered to do things differently. Sustainability is kind of the yeah, starting point of the conversation, and this is what this conversation is for. So I'm wondering, from your perspective, you are an expert in climate crisis communication, environmental communication, and how do you deal with sustainability? Is it a term? Is it a keyword? Is it a principle? Do you embed this in your thinking and your work and your teaching about the crisis, or is this something where you feel like, nah, rather not talk about it? Like, what is sustainability?
Wow, what a
Big
question.
question.
The way I approach it, yes, I embed it into my teaching
Hmm.
very actively.
Hmm.
And the reason why I do so is because what I notice, and this has been all along these years, a phenomenon, is that sustainability can have very, very different meanings. And one can say that this is the ultimate truth, and what others say is not. But I think it is more complex to that. Um, to give you an example, when I talk to actually even some of my colleagues, but definitely to some of our students, and especially the younger ones who just enter university, when the term at all comes up, sustainability, usually it is interpreted in the context of business sustainability. So they say, oh yeah, yeah, for sure, the company has to maintain itself and be profitable on a long term sort of thing. And obviously, you cannot tell someone, or pedagogically, it would not be wise to say that, well, this is not what the correct answer is. But we start into, we go into a discussion and a dialogue, and I try to bring in many different aspects and what others think about this. And step by step, we arrive at a situation where most students share and agree that perhaps three things. Sustainability is a very complex term.
Hmm.
Second, it can be addressed from very, very different perspectives. And business sustainability is only one of these. Obviously, later on, we learn terminologies and concepts and so on. And perhaps the third one is that they themselves also have a role in addressing this. If we get to this point, that's fantastic. And I'm a bit trying to direct the conversations into this direction, that talking about sustainability without themselves addressing their role or their position or their responsibility or their opportunities in that will not provide a full picture. So obviously, then there are subjects, modules as we call them, where sustainability is addressed very, very directly. That is at the heart of actually what we teach, for example, and I'm happy to talk about this somewhat in more detail later. There is a module which I was one of the co-creators, which we launched 2 years ago here at the university. It's called Earth in Crisis. And that is and we're very proud of this. To the best of our knowledge, it's one of the very, very rare examples in the UK where different schools from a university have got together and put together a module. It's an elective module which can be chosen by business, law students, biology students, social sciences, humanities. And basically it looks at climate change and sustainability from multiple perspectives. And obviously, sustainability is addressed here very, very strongly. But sustainability is very much also in the focus in our business ethics module, obviously. Yeah, perhaps these two are the best examples for that.
And if I love to talk more about the module and how you teach, but let's just briefly stay with something very interesting that you said. You said like sustainability is, if it's talked about, somehow part of a business narrative, or like part of so business sustainability or corporate sustainability is a very dominant story that is told or comes up. So why is that? How how did this happen? That sustainability is, at least at the beginning, when people start to talk about it or think about it or want to learn about it, part of the corporate world or doing business and somehow aligned to this logic of the market or the economic system.
Well, let's face it, first of all, that old habits die hard, or whatever the term is. And traditionally, financial sustainability has been let's say, the essence, or in the focus of, any CEO or any board, in terms of what is expected for them and how they measure their success. So the company or the organization needs to be financially sustainable. And I believe that because of the historical reasons of this being in the focus, I can bring a number of examples where this is still the case. Obviously, this is less and less so, and definitely changing rapidly, because many of the companies, also because of pressure from various stakeholder groups and global developments and so on, realized and had to realize that in itself, financial measuring of their performance would not suffice. That is why, the terms like triple bottom line came into play. That is why companies now, many companies, and I think many of the top companies have a leading and positive role here, now admit that next to their financial reporting, equally important is their social or ESG, or whatever the term they use is, their reporting in terms of the impact on the environment and their impact on society. So I think it is fading, but if you cut it at the very core and you look at the essence, if there is a company which is in a dire situation, in 80% of the cases, what will they do? They will cut back on things which they consider non-essential. And the first to fall for this as victim are very often commitments that they have made in terms of their social and environmental areas. They will cut back on certain stakeholder activities. They will cut back on, certain things related to their workforce, which is a very important element in social sustainability. They will cut back in perhaps commitments they have made to, society or environmental commitments and so on. Because they believe that, all right, we can cut those back, but as long as, financially we remain above the water, we're still operational. Once we're back in, black figures, then obviously we can go back. So there is still this thinking. I'm not saying it's for every organization and every company, but, and you know what? As a previous managing director of my own communications consultancy with a staff of 10, 12 people, so let's say a reasonable size consultancy. When we had financial difficulties, what were the things we cut back on? I cut back on, this might sound like history, especially for young members of the audience, but we cut back on newspaper subscriptions because we said, why is it important for our staff to read newspapers or magazines? And of course, for a strategic communications consultancy, it is very important, but can you do without it? Probably yes, actually. We're talking about mid 1990s or late 1990s here, to give you one very simple example of this.
Yeah, I think there are many ways to now these days to yeah. Well, I think the connection to now is really that there's after years of manifestation of social and environmental sustainability in the corporate world, after years of, especially in Europe, policies and regulations coming in and corporations really doing and working differently. I think now there is this backlash that everyone is talking about, initiated by, I think it's happening, and when we talk to sustainability managers or people who were applied 2 years ago to manage the sustainability agenda, and all the non-essential points on the agenda, they are now cut again, or and I think it's I think we had the same development in the early 2010s, where after years of corporate social sustainability or corporate social responsibility, or the CSR projects and initiatives being institutionalized in organizations, and then came the years of, oh no, sorry, bad years, we need to cut back on that. And then sustainability came in with new regulations and all that, and now we are pretty much in the same situation. So I'm thinking about this quite a lot, and I think the business world is one world where this needs to be thought about. But I'm wondering, and this should be in the focus of our conversation, what can we do working with those younger people who want to start in this business world at a certain point after they finish their studies? They are kind of going into the world, and how can we, broaden the perspectives, as you said before, broaden those the perspectives in terms of, okay, we need to address other issues and we need to make them, I don't know, adaptive, resistant, resilient, I don't know what, but how can we do that? And I would love to start this conversation with asking you, what is our responsibility as educators in this whole game? Okay, without complaining about all the mess that is there, but what can we actually do? What is our role? Or what is
All
your
right.
role?
Before I respond to your question
Mhm,
and collect some thoughts on that, I do want to come back for one last
mhm,
to this discussion around the companies and
Mhm.
profit-oriented organizations, because
Mhm.
I think it would not be fair to fully put the blame on them that, oh, you have been nice guys until now, but now you are dropping. It's not that simple. We live in a very, very complex world where for a significant part of the population in any country, I can speak of the UK, I can speak of Hungary, which is my home country, I can speak of Vietnam, where I've been living for 2 years. But basically, anywhere, the cost of living for the individuals has become perhaps the number one issue they have in, and especially, with young people, when I talk to my students
Mhm.
and we talk about, career perspectives and what their plans are. I have a role in that as well as head of employability for the faculty. Very often, financial securing sufficient financial means to them becomes the number one priority because they have very, very significant problems of maintaining themselves. Now, if I look at this, seeing that these are consumers for companies, they are looking for products and services which are affordable to them. Very often, the major basis of comparison these days is price. Yes, we would love to think, and obviously there are examples. We compare, the CSR record of companies, and that's how we make our choices. But price has become so important, so that puts pressure on companies to cut prices, to offer things at the, and then it leads to all these things that we have discussed. So I just wanted to make this little detour to. I'm not saying that this is a, what is the term for that? This is not a, a waiver for companies for not following ESG principles or not being responsible socially, but nevertheless, it is an explanation for the complexity of the problems. Now, coming back to your question about the role of educators and how young people can be, if needed, can be first sensitized or made sensitive and aware of the issues related to sustainability, and then turn that or help them if they are interested, help them become engaged in this field. What I find perhaps are two things. One is help our students, help young people uh, gain direct experience related one way or another to sustainability. What do I mean here? Let me bring two very relevant examples. One is connected to our university, Roehampton in South London. We have a wonderful initiative. It is called Grow Hampton, and basically it is a student run where actually students with some help and some very modest financial support from the student union have developed and are actually running a very small farm with vegetables, growing vegetables, with making their own jam of the fruits that they grow. With we have some chicken, eggs are being sold in it is all managed in a way very, very, very professionally. And the fantastic thing is that while students come to study at university, classical subject and so on, but a couple of them, I'm not saying large numbers, but a couple of them every year become engaged into tending into something related to agriculture, related to producing your own food, and actually making some very important realizations. Part of them actually connect back to their family because in their family, especially with a lot of international students, they come from families which have lands or farms or gardens and so on. So they do have it in their genes. But for others, it is an eye opener. It is absolutely an eye opener. And for example, there is a group which work with nettle. If you know what, I had to learn what nettle is, but then I
What
realized
is
I
it?
know that very, very well because we have all fell into nettle bushes in our childhood, haven't we? And basically, what you can do with nettle, actually, from tea to actually weaving and turning it into things. So this is one example. Obviously, you cannot bring everyone into it, and not everyone is hands-on in that way. But the other
Mm,
very interesting thing is having creating opportunities to have detailed conversations around these topics to understand the complexity of sustainability. And let me give an example here. I mentioned this really unique module that we teach, Earth in Crisis. One of the case studies that we work there is with Heathrow Airport expansion plans. You might know Heathrow, world's second largest airport, is currently planning to expand and build a third runway.
mhm,
Uh, Currently, it has two. Now, a third runway obviously would generate much more traffic, business on the one side, a significant social and environmental price to pay on the other side.
mm,
Now, when I bring this case study into the classroom, there are
mhm,
students there who are from biology background, um, social sciences background, law background, business background, and their task is to discuss this topic, discuss this issue, and come to a shared agreement regarding whether
mm,
they agree to this expansion plan or not, and develop a detailed argumentation to this. They are provided a very significant amount of documentation. They do their own research. It's quite a significant piece of work that they do. And what they realize there is that these issues are so complex, and you cannot simply say that this is right or that is right, because most of the things come with a price tag. And one of the main conclusions after the discussions, one of the main conclusions I make there and help them, realize is that in their life, once they graduate and they will be in a workplace, they will come into, they will come into dozens of situations like that, where they need to understand the perspective of the other person, the other subject area, or the other department, if that is the case, and to come to decisions and pursue things they believe in within this very, very complex context. So I think our role as educator is helping our students understand the complexity of life, complexity of the topic of sustainability, and help them develop skills and competencies with which they can you know, uh, um, build an argumentation, communicate to each other, develop a perspective, be critical, analyze situations. Sometimes we call these soft skills, but I think in today's world, they are even more important. And this is what I hear
mm,
from employers. They are more important than the actual technical competence on certain things, which can be learned and which can be taught, even on the workplace, or, you register to Coursera, or you look it up on Google or YouTube, whatever. But having this array of soft skills and being able to work in a team, communicate, and so on, as I described, it is essential. And there we have a role.
mm. Um, how much, like I'm thinking a lot about the concept of agency. And I'm wondering if this somehow reflects what you just said, what the students should learn and should be should develop while studying. Understanding the complexity, develop those different perspectives, develop the capability to include different perspectives. It's somehow related to decision-making competences. So I'm wondering is agency the term that would capture that, or is it something different that they should take away, at least when they study this kind of module?
I'm not exactly sure what you mean by agency here. Can
Yeah, that's a good question. Because I'm trying to read a lot about it, and I think with a background in communication and a background kind of going far back in journalism, agency for me is somehow related to authorship or narrative agency in
Mhm.
terms of that people, like if they, as you said, if they understand the complexity, if they learn and experience and live these different perspectives and learn to integrate that, and as you said, develop an argument, then the agency, so the capability to do something, is would then be somehow a narrative agency to also feel that they are capable to tell the story in a different way, so that sustainability, for example, is not a business story only, but it can be a different story. So
Right.
this is probably where I'm at. And agency is very kind of very basic. It's the capability to act.
Mm.
Um, but this is something I've because like on the one hand, they sit um, in the classroom and they get presented a lot of different things and arguments. And as soon as we get into the mode of, oh, we really want you to learn some, like, or to develop some competences and skills, I think then we're entering the space of agency so that they realize they can actually act, they can do something.
Yeah.
And I'm
Right.
wondering
Mm.
what else is needed from a pedagogical or didactic point of view to to do that, to make them realize it's not just in your head, like, oh, okay, a law perspective is different. Like, how can they actually put this into action and experience that in the classroom?
All right, I understand now clearly what you mean, and I think I can relate to this very, very strongly. Uh, I need to give a little bit of background about our
Mhm.
university, Roehampton. I think one of the key specifics is that we have a very diverse student population. A significant part, over 50%, if I'm not mistaken, of our students are international students from all around the world, Middle East, South Asia, Africa, all over the world. Less from Europe following Brexit, unfortunately, as we know, but still very, very international. Also within the student population, and here I'm now referring to our UK students, our domestic students or home students, more exactly. It is a very wide, very diverse group of students we have. Many of them come from disprivileged areas or single parent families. Uh, Quite a few of them have caring responsibilities and so on. Now, against this background, I think when I talk about social responsibility and EDI, I'm banging open doors because many of these students feel it on their skin that how difficult it is for them to carve a niche, carve a place for themselves in the job market. Because let's face it, some of them face discrimination. I've heard stories from my students. Uh, Many of them lack the confidence, the self-confidence to, act well in an interview because they are worried that, oh, because of this or that, I will not be considered as a strong candidate as someone else would be. Uh, and the third one is because against these backgrounds, many of these things, many of the, let's say, everyday things that are required for a business career or a successful um, having a job successfully in an organization They have not been in situations like this before. How do you network? How do you just casually talk about, business issues and so on? So with all of this, what I'm saying that against this background, I think our key, I would say even, destiny or
Mm,
definitely our ambition is to help our students build, no, most importantly, a strong level of confidence in themselves, confidence in their knowledge, confidence in their experience, and be able to articulate this in a convincing manner. Become their own agents, have agency in for what they believe in and what they stand for. And here, what I think the main argument is that they are representing now, the population of the UK, having a diverse population here. It is important that if you have a diverse customer base, then also your workforce needs to be equally diverse. Otherwise, you will not be able to, you know, uh, represent and have all those perspectives that your customers have. Now, one more thing to this agency and authorship thing. We and it's a very bold undertaking, and it's a long way to go. But in my view, and in the view of many of my colleagues, we would love to build uh, a strong, I'm not sure what the best term is, something like an asset, which any of our graduates can boldly say that, yes, I'm from Roehampton, I'm from the University of Roehampton, and actually the way how they work, the way how they communicate, the way how they address issues or solve problems, even an outsider will be able to tell, 5 years, 10 years down the road, oh, you're from Roehampton. That's why you understand the complexity of that
mm.
issue so well. Um, it's as I said, it's rather an ambitious vision, but I would love to be able to say that a Roehampton graduate is characterized by uh, having the ability to address complex problems in an appropriate way, have a strong level of critical thinking, and
Mm.
so on and so on, and definitely representing the perspective of sustainability in a very convincing manner.
So that brings me to maybe kind of one of the final questions. Mm, is there, um, from your perspective, is sustainability a rather Western principle? Do you see some resistance and now kind of bringing in your experiences working in Vietnam, and of course your background and probably your observations and experiences from Hungary, because that is something, especially in an international student cohort, when we start to talk about sustainability, that people from, let's say, yeah, other cultural backgrounds, even people coming in from Africa, they do approach sustainability very, very differently, and they have their very own principles of care, of yeah, very different culturally rooted relationship to nature, which they would never ever label as sustainability. So, kind of bringing us back to where we started, thinking about what is sustainability and is it something that needs to be embedded in the teaching, in the coursework, in talking about how we deal with crisis, or is it something that maybe doesn't really work, especially not maybe at the beginning. So, what might be an alternative or how to deal with that in the actual teaching? It's a very
Yeah.
personal question
Yeah.
because I'm struggling with that because I have those students, they're like, oh, pff, you know, like sustainability for us, for example, a student from the Ukraine says, oh, sustainability for us is just like a certain bit of rationality. You would never throw away some, like, I don't know, a jam glass because you can use it for something. But this is not, ooh, I'm so sustainable. But this is really just because you would never do that, just out of rationality. So, I think there are different concepts and different understandings. And then the more you got this in the classroom, the harder it gets to say, or the more abstract it gets when you start to talk about sustainability as guiding principle of action and tralali tralala. No? So this is what I'm actually struggling with. So it's more probably asking for advice in terms of
Well,
working in international and very culturally diverse um, scenarios. How to treat sustainability, how to do that.
it's a very, very valid question, and I think you actually, with your question, you already indicated the answer. I think sustainability has many layers. It starts with one's individual actions in their everyday life, not throwing away the jar of jam which you just mentioned. It the standard things, switching off the light, selecting garbage, all these things, and then it goes into more in details. How do you commute? Um, what food do you eat? How do you select? Are you looking for food which is grown locally or at least within a reasonable areas, or you want to eat? If I go to Tesco now, all the oranges are from South Africa. I prefer waiting for oranges while they're from, Italy and Spain, which is maybe January, February. Simple things like that. Uh, so commute, food, the use of energy, and so on. So these are the things which we can more or less decide on an individual level, and we make our choices. And I think it is very important to be aware of these choices. Then there is the next layer, and that is, how do we actually influence people who are around us? How do we influence the community? Do we talk to our friends about why, you know, 12 or 13 years ago, I went vegetarian and I stopped eating meat for a number of reasons. And I'm not saying for purely ethical reasons, but that is perhaps the most important element in it. And obviously, this does bring up discussions with friends who are meat eaters, and I think it's important to talk about these things and so on. And then we make choices as consumers. We have our bank. Are we looking at the ESG report of the banks where we do our banking? Are we when we choose a university, it might be a consideration as well. Have they got a green report? Do we have a look at the green report? And so on and so on. And then it goes very far, even to political levels, which, I mean, this would be a discussion on its own. So let's not go there. All of this, actually, if I may say here, I am touching on a personal initiative which I've started 2 years ago, and it's a series of short video thread discussions about climate positive actions. It is called copmitment.com. So copmitment, referring to COP, the Conference of Parties, and basically where I started 52 threads, so one for each week of the year, on actions you individually can do in terms of addressing sustainability issues and climate change. Now, coming back to your question, the other side of this, I think sustainability has a meaning to everyone. And you are right, it might have a different meaning for someone from the UK or Hungary or Vietnam, but it definitely has a strong meaning. And there is this interpretation of meaning. I think it is not a one-way street. There is not a good Western way of doing it and interpreting it, and then maybe some others need to learn it. No. We have a lot to learn from anyone around the world. I remember one of my students last year in Earth in Crisis, in this Earth in Crisis module, a student from Brazil. She stood up and, I don't remember exactly the context, what it was, and how it came up, but she said, since she moved to Europe a couple of years back, she doesn't understand why is it so that anywhere she goes in Europe, people peel all the vegetables and fruits, or almost all of them. She doesn't understand. She said back at home, and mind you, and by Brazil, I mean she was from a big city. So back at home, what you peel is a very, very important source of, vitamins and so on. So you reuse it. You don't throw away. This whole concept of throwaway culture is terrible. How can you actually reuse, recycle, repurpose things? It's a fantastic thought.
Mm.
Um, and the most shocking example to me of realizing how much we can learn from each other in terms of sustainability came to when I visited. I wasn't a formal participant, but I visited COP26, which was in Glasgow in Scotland. And in several sessions, when you come across people from all around the world and sharing their take on climate change and how they are addressing it. And when you talk to people, there was a lovely couple of people from Peru
Mhm.
who shared the story on how their traditional tribal land was taken away by a large agricultural company to grow avocados in that area, and how this led to not only the monoculture, them being deprived of their traditional lands, but also cutting short all the water resources because of the incredible water needs of avocado plantations. And at the very end of the discussion, one of these lovely old men, he raised his finger and he said, through a translator, he said that anytime you go in a supermarket and want to buy an avocado, think of me first.
Mm.
Um, and to me, that just, you know, said everything about the global significance of understanding and managing sustainability.
Mm. I love that. Ooh. Um, it's time to close our conversation because it's been a wonderful conversation. And my feeling is we could go on and go on and go on. I want to kind of keep it in the format of yeah, 45 minutes, 50 minutes. Um, and this was a very kind of yeah, touching story at the end. And I think this is also a takeaway for all of us dealing with environmental communication in the media and journalism and strategic communication in this space of CSR, sustainability and environmental communication, climate communication, is that those stories matter, those examples matter, those touch points matter, and that I think, and this is what I could clearly hear with your wonderful examples, that it is necessary to somehow materialize sustainability, to make it tangible, to really look into those stories, those encounters with people that all have a perspective on sustainability. But experience is not just from kind of this person from Peru, but also with the CEO, also with a communication consultant, also with someone who is socially disadvantaged, to really understand the stories and to create those touch points. So I'm very grateful for all the examples and thinking and reflections you shared. Very grateful for the conversation. Thank you so much for taking your time. I will
Thank you
conclude
so
the
much.
Q&A.
I thank you. This was a wonderful conversation. Your questions and thoughts really inspired me a lot. So I have a lot to take away as well. Thank you so much.